Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad you're joining us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Come on in, get comfortable, and prepare your mind for something that I promise is going to permanently change the way you look at your kitchen pantry.
Oh, absolutely. Your refrigerator, your pantry, everything.
Honestly, your entire life the next time you step foot inside a grocery store.
It's one of those topics you really can't unsee once you know about it.
Exactly. And I know you're curious, you're probably balancing 100 different things today, and you're pressed for time.
But you're also hungry for those massive paradigm-shifting aha moments.
Right. And that's exactly what we're here to deliver today. We're going on a really intense deep dive, and the profound source material we're pulling from today is called Echoes from the Edge with the Lone Wolf.
It is an absolutely fascinating collection of writings and research.
It really is. It forces us to look right at something we participate in every single day, usually completely blindly.
Yeah, I think it's important to validate the curiosity that brought you here to listen today because, well, we all eat.
Right. It's the most universal human experience there is.
Exactly. But what Echoes from the Edge with the Lone Wolf does is take that mundane, everyday act of eating and hold a massive magnifying glass to the reality of what is actually on the end of our forks.
It's wild.
We are looking at a fundamental shift in human history.
We really are. And that brings us to the core mission of this deep dive. We're taking all these articles, the excerpts, the historical data from this source material on the industrialization of food, and we're going to explore a question that we almost never stop to ask ourselves.
It's a question that sounds almost absurd until you look at the data.
Right. And that question is this: at what point does food stop being food and start becoming a manufactured substance designed to imitate it?
It sounds like science fiction.
It totally does. But as we're going to see today, it's the reality of the modern diet.
To set the stage for you, let's just think about the vast majority of human history. For thousands of years, the origin of food was incredibly simple to trace.
Yeah, you had a chicken from a farm down the road, milk from a cow.
Exactly. It was intuitive. The chain of custody from the earth to the human body was short, and it was transparent.
You knew exactly what you were eating.
Right. What's fascinating here is that over the last 70 years, that entire paradigm has been quietly dismantled.
Dismantled completely.
Food has migrated, it's moved out of the fields and the barns, and it is relocated into laboratories
Into massive factories.
and into corporate patent portfolios. We are no longer simply eating food. We are increasingly consuming industrial design.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to understand how we got to a place where we're basically eating industrial design, we have to go back and look at the historical pivot.
It's a pivot most people have no idea even happened.
Right, because it didn't happen overnight. But the real accelerator, the moment everything truly shifted, happened right after World War II.
The post-war era changed everything.
And I'll be honest, when I first started looking into this source material, the connection completely blew my mind. We are talking about the pivot from wartime explosives to peacetime agriculture.
It is arguably one of the most consequential technological pivots in human history.
It's staggering.
During World War II, you had these massive chemical companies that had built sprawling infrastructures to produce explosives.
Right, for the war effort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Specifically, they were manufacturing astronomical quantities of synthetic nitrogen compounds.
Because nitrogen is the foundational chemical component for munitions, right? Like TNT and ammonium nitrate.
Spot on. And to do this on such a massive scale, they were utilizing something called the Haber-Bosch process.
Which is, explain that for a second. What is that process?
It's a method of pulling inert nitrogen right out of the air, and then, under extreme heat and pressure, forcing it to bond with hydrogen to create ammonia.
Okay, but wait, let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
We took bomb-making infrastructure and turned it into farming infrastructure.
We did.
That sounds terrifying on paper, but wasn't this also the backbone of the Green Revolution?
It absolutely was.
Yeah. Didn't that synthetic fertilizer basically save half the world from starvation? I mean, we're feeding 8 billion people today.
Right.
We couldn't do that with just, horse manure and crop rotation, could we?
You're absolutely right, and that is the exact paradox we have to wrestle with here. The Haber-Bosch process is arguably the only reason the Earth can sustain a population of 8 billion people right now.
So it worked.
It worked incredibly well.
Yeah.
When the war ended, the demand for explosives plummeted, obviously. But the manufacturing capacity, those massive, high-pressure chemical reactors, They were all still sitting there.
Just waiting to be used.
Exactly. And these chemical companies realized that the exact same nitrogen compounds used to blow things up could be applied to the soil
To make things grow.
to stimulate massive, unprecedented plant growth. So synthetic fertilizers were born on a massive commercial scale.
And it worked with terrifying efficiency.
We could suddenly grow vastly more food on the exact same footprint of land.
But that chemical pivot didn't stop with just the nitrogen fertilizer, did it?
No, it didn't. That same post-war era saw the rise and the widespread application of new synthetic pesticides and herbicides.
Which were also derived from wartime chemical research, right?
Many of them were, yes. And when you combine synthetic fertilizer, synthetic pesticides, and synthetic herbicides, you completely change the rules of agriculture.
Because you don't need the ecosystem anymore.
Exactly. You no longer need to rely on complex, varied ecosystems. You don't need crop rotation or natural pest predators to keep a farm viable.
You just spray it.
You spray it, you eradicate all the biological complexity, and you grow monocultures.
Monocultures, just vast, endless, sweeping fields of just a single crop, stretching literally as far as the eye can see.
And our material focuses heavily on the two reigning champions of this monoculture revolution.
Corn and soy.
Corn and soy.
And the crazy thing is, these two crops aren't really even treated as food anymore, are they?
Not in the traditional sense, no.
They essentially became the foundational building blocks, like the raw code of modern food processing.
That is the perfect way to describe it. They are industrial feedstocks.
Let's look at the mechanics of corn for a second.
Okay, yeah. When field corn leaves the farm, it doesn't go to a kitchen.
Right.
It goes to a wet milling plant. This is a massive industrial refinery.
It sounds like an oil refinery.
It functions very much like one. The corn kernel is steeped in a weak sulfur dioxide solution
Why do they do that?
to loosen the bonds between its structural components. Then it gets mechanically ground up, separated in these giant centrifuges, and chemically fractured,
Fractured, so they're breaking it apart.
taking it completely apart. The corn oil is extracted, the germ is separated, the endosperm is isolated to get pure starch.
And then they take that pure starch and basically play mad scientist with it, right?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
They use specific industrial enzymes, things like alpha amylase and glucose isomerase,
To do what?
to molecularly alter that starch. They convert it into high fructose corn syrup, maltodextrins, dextrose, and all these specialized thickeners.
So the corn is just completely disassembled?
Completely. And soybeans follow a very similar, highly mechanized path.
How so?
Soybeans are routinely crushed and then bathed in hexane.
Wait, hexane, isn't that a petrochemical solvent?
Yes, it is. They use it to extract the oil out of the soy, and then what's left over is processed into soy protein isolates and a myriad of industrial emulsifiers.
Like soy lecithin.
Exactly, like soy lecithin.
I want you, listening right now, to try and picture this in your mind. Just paint a vivid picture of what happened to the grocery store.
That's a stark contrast.
Imagine walking into a grocery store a century ago. You saw a potato, you saw a cut of meat, you saw a whole grain.
It was recognizable.
Right. Now, fast forward to today. You're walking down aisles filled with products assembled from these isolated, chemically extracted fractions of corn and soy.
Recombined into thousands of different shapes, textures, and brands.
The grocery store is basically just a massive, climate-controlled warehouse of reconstructed foods.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this system created enormous, unprecedented efficiency.
It really did.
It made calories highly abundant and incredibly cheap to produce. But the profound trade-off for all of that efficiency was distance.
Distance.
It created a massive, unbridgeable psychological and physical distance between the consumer and the farmer.
Yeah, the dinner plate is no longer a reflection of the local land or the current season.
Not at all. It's simply the final stage, the endpoint of a sprawling global industrial process.
And there's a haunting detail from the research that really struck me regarding that distance.
Oh, about the kids.
Yes. Because of this monumental shift, many children today can easily identify a fast food logo from a mile away on the highway.
But they cannot recognize the actual plant or the actual animal that their meal supposedly came from.
The disconnect is total.
It's a complete abstraction of sustenance.
That concept of abstraction of the dinner plate being the endpoint of a global industrial process leads us perfectly into the next layer of our deep dive.
This is where it gets very practical.
I want you to mentally walk into your own pantry right now. Just think about something incredibly basic, something humans have relied on for millennia.
A simple loaf of bread.
Exactly, a simple loaf of bread. We all know a traditional sourdough takes a few basic ingredients and time.
Flour, water, yeast, and salt.
That's it, 4 things. But compare that to a modern supermarket loaf sitting in a plastic bag.
Look at the label.
It reads like a chemistry textbook. You aren't looking at 4 ingredients. You're looking at 15, maybe 20 ingredients.
You've got azotocarbonamide,
Calcium propin.
ditem, mono, and diglycerides.
And it's crucial to understand the biochemistry of why those extra ingredients are even in there.
Because they certainly aren't added to make the bread more nutritious.
Definitely not. Every single one of those chemical additives serves a highly specific industrial function.
To solve a logistical problem.
Let's look at datum, for example. What is that?
Well, datum stands for diacetyl tartaric acid esters of monoglycerides.
Rolls right off the tongue.
Doesn't it? It's a dough conditioner.
Yeah.
Its specific job is to interact with the gluten network in the flour,
Okay, making it stronger.
making it incredibly strong and flexible so that it can trap gas bubbles more effectively during massive high-speed automated mixing.
But why do we even need that? If bread is just baked and eaten, who cares how strong the gluten network is during automated mixing?
Because in the modern system, bread isn't just baked and eaten locally anymore.
Oh, right. The scale.
When your goal is to bake 1 million loaves of bread in a centralized factory in the Midwest, load them onto massive pallets, put them on 18-wheelers, and ship them thousands of miles across the country.
That bread is going to take a beating.
A natural 4-ingredient bread will literally collapse under the vibrational stress of a bumpy truck ride.
Are you serious?
Yes. The datem provides the structural integrity necessary for transport.
So a loaf of bread is no longer just baking, it's structural engineering,
It is entirely engineering, and the other chemicals follow suit.
like the emulsifiers.
Right. Emulsifiers keep the moisture perfectly suspended so the bread feels soft to the touch for weeks.
And the calcium propionate.
That is a preservative specifically added to inhibit mold growth. You have to remember, from a strictly manufacturing standpoint, a natural loaf of bread is a logistical nightmare.
Because it spoils quickly.
It goes stale, it's fragile. The chemical additives are technological solutions that allow the food to survive weeks or even months of grueling transport and warehouse storage.
Without visually or texturally changing.
Exactly.
It's the architecture of industrial sustenance. And the material provides this incredible analogy that makes this so clear.
The tale of two apples.
Yes, the tale of 2 apples. Let's look at apple number 1.
Okay, apple number 1 grew on a tree. It's a biological entity, and because it is biological, it carries the unpredictable, chaotic fingerprints of nature.
Right, so it might have subtle, unexpected variations in its sweetness depending on how much rain fell that month.
Its shape might be a little lopsided.
This apple is a direct reflection of an ecological system.
Now contrast that with apple number 2.
The modern apple.
Apple number 2 represents modern agriculture. This apple has been fundamentally designed for shipping efficiency.
So it's been selectively bred not for delicate flavor, but for a thick skin.
Thick skin and dense flesh. It must possess a standardized appearance so it fits perfectly into the automated sorting machines and packing crates.
And it has to be resilient enough to survive aggressive mechanical harvesting.
Exactly.
But the craziest part about apple number 2 isn't even how it's grown, if it's how it's stored.
Yes, the storage technology is where the logistics truly take over. After apple number 2 is harvested, it isn't sent to a market.
Where does it go?
It's sent to a controlled atmosphere warehouse. First, they treat the apples with a gas called 1-methylcyclopropene, or 1-MCP.
What does that gas do?
This chemical specifically blocks the ethylene receptors in the fruit. Ethylene is the natural plant hormone that triggers ripening.
So by blocking those receptors,
You literally pause the biological aging process of the apple.
you pause it.
Yes. Then you lock those apples in massive, sealed rooms where the oxygen levels are plummeted from the normal 21% down to about 1 or 2%.
And a temperature.
The temperature is dropped to just barely above freezing. The apple is held in a state of suspended animation,
Like a coma.
essentially put into a coma,
Yeah.
for upwards of 10 to 12 months before it ever sees the glowing lights of the grocery store produce section.
10 to 12 months.
Up to a year, yes.
So you could be eating an apple in July that was picked the previous August.
Easily.
2 very different relationships with food, yet we call them both apples.
We do.
And consumers are walking through the produce section, thumping melons and looking at stems, completely unaware of this hidden reality.
And we have to emphasize the true cost of this logistical efficiency.
What's the cost?
The cumulative effect of designing food for transport, for standardized packing crates, and for year-long shelf life is the systematic loss of biological variability.
Because natural foods are supposed to change.
They fluctuate with the health of the soil, the shifting of the weather, the turning of the seasons.
But industrial foods are designed with a primary mandate to eliminate those differences entirely.
The system demands total standardization.
That is the illusion, isn't it? You walk into the store and marketing is everywhere. You see beautiful imagery of rolling green hills,
Rustic red barns.
sun-dappled orchards on the packaging. But the actual reality is that much of the decision-making about what you are eating has completely shifted away from the farmer standing in the field.
The decisions are now being made by supply chain managers.
In sterile laboratories, humming data centers, and corporate boardrooms.
It really makes you pause and ask yourself, when you buy an apple today, are you actually buying a piece of fruit?
Or are you just buying a perfectly optimized, incredibly durable logistical unit?
That's the exact tension we're looking at here. And scientists and nutritionists recognize this monumental shift in how food is created.
They realize that the old ways of categorizing food just didn't work anymore.
Right. Categorizing food just by traditional metrics like carbohydrates, fats, and proteins was no longer sufficient.
Because a carbohydrate from a whole potato behaves differently than a highly refined carbohydrate extracted from corn and bound with an emulsifier.
Exactly. They needed a new way to measure this reality, which brings us to a vital framework, the NOVA classification system.
The NOVA classification. Okay, let's break this down for everyone listening, because this is the scientific framework designed specifically for categorizing food by its level of processing.
It cuts through the marketing.
It gives us a vocabulary for what we're actually seeing in the aisles.
Precisely. NOVA breaks the food supply down into 4 distinct groups. Let's start with Group 1.
Okay.
Group 1 is unprocessed or minimally processed foods. This is your single ingredient reality.
So fresh fruits, vegetables, eggs, milk, seeds.
Right. And Group 2 is processed culinary ingredients. These are substances extracted from Group 1 or from nature to be used in kitchens.
Things like olive oil, butter, sugar, and salt.
Simple enough.
And then Group 3 is where we start combining things, right?
Right. Group 3 is processed foods. This is usually a combination of Group 1 and Group 2.
So think of canned beans, salted nuts, artisanal cheese.
Or that traditional 4-ingredient freshly baked bread we mentioned earlier.
It's processed, but the processing is relatively simple and recognizable.
Exactly. But Group 4 is where the entire landscape shifts. Group 4 is ultra-processed foods.
And this is where the danger lies, right? How exactly does NOVA define ultra-processed?
It defines them as industrial formulations made entirely or mostly from substances extracted from foods.
Like the starches and hydrogenated oils we talked about.
Derived from food constituents or synthesized in laboratories.
Got it.
The hallmark of a Group 4 food is the presence of cosmetic additives. If it contains artificial flavors, colorings, emulsifiers, texturizers, or artificial sweeteners designed to make the final product hyper-palatable, it is ultra-processed.
So these are foods that cannot be recreated in a home kitchen.
Never. Because you simply don't have the chemical inventory or the high-pressure extrusion machinery required to make them.
And here is the statistic that completely stopped me in my tracks when I read the source material.
It's a big one.
When you look at the dietary data in the United States, well over half of the calories consumed, we're talking nearly 60% in some demographics now come from these Group 4 ultra-processed formulations.
Let that sink in for a second.
More than 50% of the energy keeping the population alive is derived from manufactured industrial formulations that didn't even exist a century ago.
It's a profound, unprecedented shift in human biology. We are fueling the human machine with a completely novel chemical matrix.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the research uses the perfect example to illustrate this Group 4 transformation.
The chicken nugget.
The chicken nugget. Let's deconstruct the anatomy of a modern nugget.
Let's do it.
If we go back a few decades, the original concept of a chicken nugget was basically just Group 3 processing. You took a piece of intact chicken meat, you chopped it up, you covered it in a simple breading, and you fried it.
Very straightforward.
But let's look at the modern Group 4 iteration.
The modern iteration is a masterclass in food engineering. The meat itself is often mechanically separated.
What does that actually mean?
This involves taking the leftover carcasses from the prime cuts, grinding them up, and forcing them through high-pressure sieves to create a meat paste.
A meat paste?
But meat paste doesn't have the texture of a chicken breast, so you have to chemically reconstruct the bite.
How do they do that?
They use a variety of functional ingredients. They might use transglutaminase,
Also known as meat glue.
right, meat glue,
Mm.
which is an enzyme that cross-links proteins, binding the fragmented meat paste back into a solid form.
And then they have to make it juicy, right?
Yes. They add modified food starches to hold water and maintain a juicy mouthfeel, even after it's been frozen and reheated.
They use sodium tryptophospate for moisture retention.
They add complex binder systems made of alginate or xanthan gum.
And then the flavor.
The entire structure is heavily seasoned with synthesized flavor concentrates and flash-fried in engineered hydrogenated oils,
Oils specifically designed for extreme oxidative stability.
meaning the oil won't go rancid during months of frozen storage.
So it's basically a sponge made of chicken protein and starch, engineered to hold flavored water and fat.
That's essentially what it is.
But why? Why go through this incredibly complex, technologically demanding, multi-step chemical process just to make a chicken nugget? It seems like way more work than just cutting up a chicken breast.
Because the driving force isn't culinary, it's pure economics.
Economics.
Restructured foods, foods that have been broken down to a molecular level and rebuilt with cheap commodity fillers, generate exponentially higher profit margins.
Because the raw materials are so cheap.
Exactly. By altering the very physical structure of the food, manufacturers can utilize the cheapest, lowest quality raw materials, pump them full of water and carbohydrate binders, and create a final product that is incredibly cheap to produce.
And furthermore, it's perfectly standardizable.
A meat paste can be molded into the exact same shape, weighing the exact same amount to the fraction of a gram, millions of times a day.
So a nugget in New York tastes, feels, and looks exactly the same as a nugget in Tokyo or London.
Not because it's an incredibly high-quality piece of poultry.
But because the biological variability of the chicken has been completely erased and replaced by a standardized chemical formula.
Exactly. The structure of the food has been optimized for the corporation's profit and supply chain, not for the consumer's biology.
Which brings us to perhaps the most mind-bending part of our deep dive.
The sensory hack.
We've talked about the structure, the logistics, the NOVA classifications, and the ingredients, but what about the actual experience? Because let's be honest, people eat ultra-processed foods because they taste incredibly good.
They do.
How does this industrial sustenance hack our perception? To understand this, we have to look back at our own evolutionary history.
Yes, the biology of taste is critical here.
For early human beings, the senses were our primary survival tools.
Taste equaled biological truth.
When early humans tasted something sweet, it was a biological guarantee of dense, safe, easily metabolizable energy, like a ripe piece of fruit or honey.
When they tasted something bitter, it was an evolutionary alarm bell signaling caution, warning them of toxic alkaloids or poison.
And the smell and taste of cooking meat, the savory umami, was a beacon signaling vital amino acids, protein, and survival.
For millennia, we evolved to implicitly trust our senses. They guided us toward the foods that sustained our lives.
And that is the exact relationship that modern food engineering has quietly, almost invisibly rewritten.
We still have those evolutionary responses, those deep brain wirings that crave sweet and savory.
But the triggers have been hacked.
Modern flavor chemists have now successfully mapped the exact molecular compounds responsible for taste and aroma.
They've basically cracked the code of human flavor perception.
The technology behind this is fascinating. Flavor companies use incredibly sophisticated equipment.
Like the GCMS machines, right?
Yes, gas chromatography, mass spectrometry. They can take a real, perfectly ripe strawberry, capture the air around it, and run it through the GCMS machine to identify the exact volatile chemical compounds that make a strawberry smell and taste like a strawberry.
And they found that a specific compound like ethyl methylphenyl glycidate is a primary driver of that classic strawberry aroma.
Okay, so once they know the chemical formula, what do they do with it?
Once they have isolated that molecular signature in a lab, they don't need the strawberry anymore.
They can synthesize that exact compound.
They can endlessly reproduce it.
The same goes for butter. The rich, creamy taste of butter is heavily driven by a molecule called diacetyl.
You don't need to churn cream to get diacetyl. You can synthesize it, which is exactly what's used in movie theater popcorn butter flavoring.
Even the complex, savory taste of a seared steak, which relies on the Maillard reaction, a complex chemical interaction between amino acids and reducing sugars under heat, can be completely recreated from the ground up.
Chemists can combine specific, isolated amino acids and sugars in a vat, apply heat, and mimic the exact chemical reactions of a grilling steak.
This is the phenomenon driving the modern supermarket.
This is why you can buy a vibrant pink strawberry yogurt that contains absolutely zero actual strawberries, yet the moment you open the lid, it delivers a massive, hyper-realistic, instantly recognizable strawberry flavor profile to your brain.
It's an engineered sensory payload.
And it's the exact same technology allowing the booming plant-based meat alternative industry to thrive.
That's a great example. If you look at some of the leading plant-based burgers, they literally bleed red and taste like beef.
How do they achieve that?
By utilizing soy lechemoglobin. Lechemoglobin is a protein found in the root nodules of soy plants that is structurally very similar to myoglobin, the protein that gives animal muscle its red color and metallic, meaty flavor.
So by isolating and massively scaling up the production of this specific plant molecule,
They're recreating the visual and sensory experience of eating an animal without the animal.
in other words, flavor has become programmable.
It's no longer an inherent biological property of the food.
It's an application, a layer of code applied to a neutral-based substrate.
We're basically eating software.
This raises an important question, perhaps the most profound philosophical question we encounter in this space.
Because the human brain, despite all our technological advancement, still interprets these sensory signals the exact same way it did on the ancient savanna.
Right. If a synthesized chemical compound hits your tongue and fits into the sweet receptors, your brain registers the presence of fruit or honey.
It prepares the digestive system for a rush of natural sugars.
If a lab-created flavor profile mimics roasted meat, your brain registers the presence of vital proteins.
The sensory illusion works perfectly. The biological hack is complete.
But the deeper question is this. If taste no longer tells the biological truth about the physical origin of what we're eating, what exactly are we experiencing when we eat?
That is heavy.
Because historically, the act of eating was our most intimate, tangible connection to the physical world around us.
Eating connected us to the specific land we lived on.
It connected us to the changing of the seasons, it connected us to the animals, to the soil, and to the physical labor required to grow and harvest that food.
But now, that connection has been severed.
Today, eating increasingly connects us to chemical engineering, to advanced biotechnology, to supply chain logistics, and to sprawling global manufacturing systems.
The relationship between the flavor we experience in our mouths and the physical reality of the world has been completely rewritten.
And the wildest part, the public hasn't even noticed.
The illusion is so seamless, so perfectly engineered to hit our evolutionary bliss points that we just keep eating, completely unaware that the map no longer matches the territory.
It's a profound psychological and biological disconnect.
And what's crucial to understand is that this disconnect is only accelerating as we look toward the horizon of food technology.
Which leads us to the ultimate simulation. We are moving past the era of simply flavoring soy and corn.
Right, let's take one final walk through the modern supermarket.
I want you to visualize it. You walk down the aisles, and what do you see? You see an illusion of infinite choice.
Rows upon rows of brightly colored packages.
Perfectly symmetrical fruits.
And convenient, ready-to-eat meals promising authentic, bold flavors.
Everything appears totally normal, totally natural, but beneath the cardboard and the plastic, there's a quiet question that no one wants to ask.
When you look at that cart full of groceries, how much of what you are about to feed your body is actually still part of the natural food chain?
And how much of it has become an advanced industrial simulation of the natural food chain?
The cutting edge of this simulation is moving rapidly into the realm of cellular agriculture.
We are talking about the emergence of massive bioreactors and precision fermentation. Let's break those down. First, cultivated meat.
Biotechnology companies now possess the capability to take a small biopsy of genuine animal cells, say from a cow or a chicken.
And they place those cells into a cultivator, which is essentially a massive stainless steel brewing vat.
They bathe those cells in a nutrient-rich broth of amino acids, sugars, and vitamins.
Often trying to replace the traditionally used fetal bovine serum with synthetic alternatives.
The cells multiply and grow into actual animal tissue, entirely removing the living, breathing, grazing animal from the meat production process.
So it is biologically meat, but it has never been part of an animal. It's grown in a brewery.
And then there's precision fermentation, which might be even more disruptive.
Precision fermentation is incredibly disruptive. This involves genetic engineering at the microbial level.
Scientists can take the specific sequence of cow DNA that is responsible for producing whey protein, the key protein in milk,
and insert that DNA sequence into a microorganism.
like a specific strain of yeast or a fungus like Trichoderma ricci.
They put that genetically modified fungus into a fermentation tank, feed it sugar, and the fungus reads the cow DNA and brews real biologically identical dairy protein.
You harvest the protein and you have milk without the cow, cheese without the dairy farm.
And obviously, there are divided, deeply contrasting perspectives on this technological leap.
We are looking at this completely neutrally today, just examining the facts and the trajectories presented in the research.
On one side, you have the technologists, the venture capitalists, and the climate advocates who frame these innovations as the ultimate sustainable solution.
They argue this is absolutely necessary progress.
From their perspective, traditional large-scale animal agriculture is too resource-intensive, requires too much land, and produces too many greenhouse gases to sustainably feed a planet that's heading toward 10 billion people.
They see bioreactors as a triumph of human ingenuity that can provide protein without the environmental footprint.
And on the other side, you have critics, traditional agriculturalists, and food sovereignty advocates who view this trajectory as deeply unsettling.
To them, it represents the final, complete consolidation of the food supply.
It's the total replacement of decentralized traditional agriculture by absolute centralized corporate food manufacturing.
The unsettling part isn't necessarily that humans are innovating.
After all, human innovation has always reshaped the way we eat, from the invention of the plow to the discovery of pasteurization.
The truly unsettling part is how this shifts the control of food away from farmers and rural communities and places it directly into the hands of biotech firms holding the patents on the cell lines and the proprietary fermentation microbes.
So, what does this all mean?
It means that the reality of the grocery store is fundamentally different from what we perceive.
When you stand in the aisle, looking at the shelves, deciding what to put in your basket, you think you're engaging in a traditional consumer behavior.
You think you're simply choosing between competing brands of food.
But the reality is shifting under your feet. Increasingly, you are not choosing between brands. You are actually choosing between completely different methods of industrial manufacturing.
The supermarket is no longer just a place to buy groceries.
It has become a brightly lit laboratory showroom.
It is exactly that. A showroom displaying the triumphs of chemical engineering, genomic manipulation, and logistical optimization.
It's absolutely mind-blowing. And as we begin to pull all of these threads together and synthesize what we've uncovered today, the sheer scale of the journey is staggering.
It truly is. If we trace the arc of this deep dive, we've journeyed from the immediate aftermath of a world war, watching the high-pressure reactors used for explosives pivot to synthesize the nitrogen fertilizers that built the modern monoculture.
We've watched the simple four-ingredient loaf of sourdough morph into a highly engineered, structurally reinforced logistical unit designed to survive cross-country trucking routes.
We've seen the apple transition from an unpredictable biological fruit born of rain and soil to a durable, standardized object optimized for 1 MCP gas and controlled atmosphere storage.
And finally, we've seen the very essence of flavor, our deep evolutionary guide to biological truth hacked by GCMS machines and flavor chemists.
Leading us to a present where traditional agriculture is slowly being overshadowed by programmable flavors, precision fermentation, and lab-grown cellular agriculture.
And this brings it all back directly to you, the listener.
Why does all of this deeply researched, heavily scientific information matter for your everyday life?
It matters for your very next trip to the grocery store. It's about waking up. It's about possessing the awareness required to pierce the veil of the rustic marketing and the idyllic farm packaging, and recognizing the sheer reality of the industrial simulation we are consuming.
The definition of food has already profoundly changed, while most of us simply weren't looking.
But you now have the knowledge to see the architecture behind the aisle. You understand the complex chemistry of the label, the logistical realities of the apple, and the economic incentives behind the ultra-processed nugget.
Knowledge is only valuable when it is understood and applied. You are now equipped to look at your dinner plate and ask the hard, necessary questions about origin, about the manufacturing process, and about the biological reality of what you are consuming.
And as we close out this deep dive into the industrialization of food, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own.
We've talked extensively today about how the entire architecture of the industrial food system is designed to mercilessly eliminate the unpredictable variability of nature.
The whole point of the system is to erase the chaos of changing soils, unpredictable weather, and shifting seasons in favor of absolute, highly profitable, scalable consistency.
But think about this. If we, as human beings, are fundamentally biological creatures who evolved over millions of years alongside and deeply dependent upon the wild, unpredictable chaos of nature,
What happens to human biology when we no longer interact with that natural variability?
If our microbiomes and our cellular structures were designed to navigate a dynamic, constantly shifting biological world, what is the ultimate long-term physiological consequence of feeding our bodies a perfectly consistent, biologically sterile, heavily engineered simulation year after year?
What happens to the human machine when you completely remove the environmental chaos it was built to consume? I want to thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey through the source material today. Keep asking the hard questions, look closely at those labels, and above all, stay curious.